to episode 2 of Vinyl to Your Ears. We're covering Canadian bands that should have had a much bigger impact on the global music scene, and definitely here in Canada. And today we're talking about Regina's Pride and Joy, the Queen City Kids. This is album 1. Awesome cover. Love the saran wrap dress. And we had 4 guys that grew up together and started this band at quite a young age, actually. And John Donnelly on bass guitar. We had Kevin California Fyhn on lead guitar and vocals. Alex Chuaqui, vicious vocalist, who also played guitar and keyboards for the band. And on drums we actually had Jeff Germain. And these guys cut their teeth very early and basically started at a very young age, before they even had driver's licenses. And they were playing around and making a name for themselves, Manitoba and Saskatchewan. As the band started to progress and get their stuff together, they were originally called Cambridge. And they decided they needed a better name, one that suited the fact that they were a very original songwriting band. They weren't just a cover band, and they were after a record deal, and they fought hard for it. And out of the blue, a suggestion came from one of the members to call themselves the Queen City Kids. The name stuck, and they continued touring around the van, and we're very proud of their new name. And once they established themselves a wee bit further down the road, they were definitely getting known, like I said, for just a loud, in-your-face party rock band with a definite sound. And Alex's vocals, definitely sheer grit and power, and very rock and roll, very unique, and complemented very well by Kevin Fyhn's harmonies and lead vocals, actually. The two voices were a great compliment for each other, and the band, growing up with the Beatles in the late 60s, were very fond of big harmonies and hooks. They knew what to do, so their songwriting was awesome. As they progressed, a little known band called Rush, believe it or not, was just starting to do their first tour across Canada, and they'd heard about the guys and picked up the Queen City Kids as openers. And Queen City Kids, these guys were just kids. And they put on an awesome show, and Rush embraced them and gave them a lot of encouragement and support, and actually found them management and told them very early on in their careers, get good management and pay attention. And it's a good thing that they did. They released this first album, self-titled, some killer tracks on here, recorded at Century 21 in Winnipeg. And if you have not heard the album, we're going to spin some songs a little bit later and give you a taste of what's found on this album, as well as their second album. And on here, definitely some favorites. Follow You There starts with a killer guitar riff. Fyhn actually used a power soak that was made popular by Boston's guitar player, and he just had a killer sound, and that song definitely represents part of their uniqueness. And Empty Eyes, Carrying the Stick, Accept My Love, Down Again has a killer round of vocals and some really stellar harmonies. So this album actually did really well. They did extensive touring in Canada, and they got a lot of radio airplay. And the album actually did go gold in Canada, with a lot of support, especially from Winnipeg and Regina and Brandon. And these guys were on their way. So with the success of their first album going gold, these guys were believing in themselves and proving to a lot of people that they had the goods. They were absolutely awesome live, and their raw energy just smacked you in the face. And I personally remember seeing them in Winnipeg at the zoo in the beginning of the 80s, and the guitars would just rip your face off, and they sounded exactly like the album, but 10 times better. They were so loud, but they were so good vocally, and their performance was spot on. So they put on a killer show and delivered the goods. So they started making plans to release their second LP, which was called Black Box. And with the success of the first album, they were getting some interest. Unfortunately, once they were signed to CBS for the first album, CBS decided to not release the first album in the US. For whatever reasons, they were going to wait for the second album to hit and hopefully go for a second gold, but definitely higher, provided they did well in the US. So unfortunately, they were asked to start doing their second album a little bit early, and with the promise that CBS would release it in the States. So their producer really wanted to capture some of the raw live energy, and that was a huge part of their sound. So instead of going into a regular studio, Century 21 decided to go into an empty old bank in downtown Winnipeg. And 60-foot ceilings with vaults and all kinds of rooms. They used natural reverb and got an awesome sound on this album. And killer tracks, like the title track, Black Box, Chains, In Your Eyes. They had radio play with Dance, which you heard at the beginning of the feature here, and Girls, and Ripped Off is just a killer aggressive song that I'll spin a little bit later. So they released the album and continued touring, and unfortunately CBS did not release the album in the States. So these guys were hurting. They toured relentlessly. They opened for Ozzy, Blue Oyster Cult, Streetheart. They played all across Canada. They dipped their toes into the American soil as well. And after many, many years of being together as kids and continuing on into their adulthood, we're looking at 1982 for this release. And again, unfortunately, this album did not go gold, and CBS just lost interest in the band, which is really unfortunate. So again, this is a band that was raised on the Beatles and harmonies and hooks, and two great singers in the band. So you did have the aggressive vocals of Alex and the softer, little bit poppier vocals of California Fyhn. So what a great combination, but sadly a lot of money was disappearing, going straight into management. They had really bad marketing, and they just did not get the push that they deserved. So you'd throw on the albums thinking these guys are going to be huge, and unfortunately they were not, and it's a real shame. I remember seeing a reunion show quite a few years back in Winnipeg once I moved back from Toronto. And definitely the guys were showing their age, but they delivered both albums to a T. It's just amazing to see them. And the crowd loved them. They still have a huge following around Winnipeg. You still hear them on the radio once in a while. But unfortunately, like I said, the money was sucked out of the band. They got tired of relentless touring, and I can't stress that enough. They played everywhere and anywhere. And so at some point the band just decided they had just had enough, and they did not do a third album. They had a best of that did come out after, but their greatest hits consisted of two great albums, so it was more important just buy these two albums. They were so awesome. So we're going to spin some tracks from the needle into my speakers, into your ears. That's the whole point of this show. No digital.
Why don't you
today's episode. The Queen City Kids definitely should have been bigger and better. Had they only gotten that push in the States, they would have annihilated some of the bands that were just so-so in America. But that's it for now. Thank you for paying attention and for listening, and vinyl high five to you. Crank it up. We'll catch you next time.